Today is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. The time is 7 p.m. Eastern. Welcome to Geopolitical Updates from AGI Era. Geneva's diplomatic halls today hosted the initial stages of a fresh attempt at de-escalation in the protracted Russia-Ukraine conflict, yet the atmosphere was fraught with skepticism. After a full day of closed-door discussions, the first round of peace talks concluded with little indication of tangible progress. Both sides acknowledged the complexity of the issues at hand, with expectations for an immediate breakthrough remaining notably low. This preliminary engagement comes amidst continued military maneuvers and a deepening humanitarian crisis, highlighting the vast chasm that mediators are attempting to bridge. The mere fact that these discussions are occurring, however, signals a reluctant acknowledgement from both Kyiv and Moscow that a purely military solution remains elusive. The critical question now revolves around whether these talks can evolve beyond symbolic gestures to address the profound strategic divergences that fuel the ongoing hostilities. Turning our attention to the Middle East, Iran has announced that guiding principles have been established with the U.S. during their latest round of nuclear negotiations. While Tehran indicates more work is necessary to finalize any agreement, Washington has yet to publicly comment on this development. This cautiously optimistic declaration from the Iranian side emerges as a U.S. buildup of warships and fighter jets continues to be tracked near Iranian waters, a palpable sign of enduring regional tensions. In a separate development, U.S. military forces have deployed to Nigeria. These troops, landing at an airfield in Bauchi State, are intended to support Nigeria's ongoing efforts against Islamist militants. Officials emphasize that the U.S. personnel will not engage in direct combat operations. This deployment signifies an escalating international commitment to counter-terrorism initiatives within West Africa, a region grappling with persistent insurgencies. Meanwhile, a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker, previously detained by French authorities, has been released from Marseille. The vessel's liberation followed the payment of a fine amounting to several million euros. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot confirmed its departure, underscoring the legal and financial pressures being exerted on entities believed to be circumventing international sanctions. Shifting to East Asia, China continues to exert economic pressure on Japan, a response to recent comments made by Prime Minister Takaichi regarding Taiwan. Beijing's retaliatory measures have included the recall of pandas and the cancellation of tourist flights, impacting Japan's economy in targeted ways. The situation highlights the precarious balance of power in the Indo-Pacific and the economic leverage Beijing is willing to employ in response to perceived challenges to its One China policy. Lastly, the U.S. military has reported that 11 individuals were killed in multiple strikes on alleged drug boats. This incident is part of a broader series of operations since September, which have resulted in over 130 fatalities attributed to these alleged narco-trafficking operations. These actions underscore Washington's continued efforts to disrupt illicit drug trade routes, often through direct interdiction. The initiation of Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Geneva, despite their modest initial outcome, represents a critical pivot point in a conflict that has reshaped European security architecture. The dialogue itself, held under the auspices of a neutral third party, is a testament to the persistent diplomatic channels, however fragile, that remain open between Moscow and Kyiv. Reports from Western newswires like Reuters highlighted the stark divergence in initial positions, with Ukraine reiterating its demands for full territorial integrity and Russia emphasizing its security concerns in newly annexed territories. However, perspectives from Al Jazeera provide a more nuanced interpretation, suggesting that while public statements remained rigid, the mere act of negotiation, even without a joint communiqué, signals a potential, albeit gradual, softening of positions behind the scenes. Al Jazeera's reporting alluded to the intense pressure from global powers, particularly from the European Union and UN member states, who are keen to alleviate the conflict's broader economic and humanitarian impacts. The emphasis from these independent sources points to the process of talks being as significant as any immediate outcome, allowing for the potential establishment of technical working groups on prisoner exchanges or grain corridor security, even if a comprehensive ceasefire remains distant. The strategic so what of these preliminary discussions extends far beyond the immediate battlefield. Economically, prolonged conflict has continued to disrupt global supply chains, particularly in energy and food. Even a hint of de-escalation, such as the commitment to a second day of talks, can lead to subtle shifts in commodity markets, potentially easing inflationary pressures that have plagued many nations. The IMF has repeatedly warned that the conflict's continuation threatens global economic stability, making any diplomatic overture a potential upside risk for markets. From a geopolitical standpoint, the talks test the cohesion of NATO and EU support for Ukraine. Any perceived concessions by Kyiv could strain the alliance, while a complete breakdown could signal a need for increased military aid. Furthermore, the format and engagement of these talks set a precedent for future conflict resolution in a multipolar world. The involvement of non-aligned nations, potentially as future mediators or guarantors, could alter the traditional U.S. and European-led diplomatic frameworks. The long-term strategic consequence hinges on whether these initial conversations can transition into a sustainable dialogue. Should they fail to do so, the global balance of power will continue to be characterized by prolonged regional conflicts, increased defense spending, and a fragmentation of international alliances. Conversely, a breakthrough, even a minor one, could pave the way for a redefined European security order and potentially shift resources from defense to development, influencing global trade patterns and fostering greater international cooperation. The true significance lies in the potential for these discussions to evolve from a mere airing of grievances into substantive negotiations that tackle the core issues of sovereignty, security guarantees, and territorial integrity. Without such a progression, the talks risk becoming a cyclical diplomatic exercise, offering little solace to a war-weary populace and an increasingly anxious international community. Today's geopolitical landscape was dominated by the challenging prospects of peace talks in Geneva between Russia and Ukraine, and Iran's cautious optimism following nuclear discussions with the U.S. These developments underscore the persistent efforts to navigate complex international disputes amidst ongoing tensions. For our watch list tomorrow, first, monitor any official U.S. statements regarding the Iranian nuclear talks, specifically whether they corroborate Tehran's claims of agreed guiding principles. A joint statement or a significant divergence in narratives will be a key indicator. Second, observe the continuation of Russia-Ukraine discussions in Geneva. Any agreement on humanitarian corridors or prisoner exchanges, however small, would signal a nascent shift beyond stalemate.